Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of VGU Talks, and let's talk games. Today we're going to be talking about outsourcing, and how, at least in my opinion, outsourcing is one of the biggest dangers when it comes to video game development. Now, what's brought this on? Well, in case you have been living under a rock, or in case you haven't purchased the new Batman Arkham Knight game, the game has got some pretty good reviews behind it, as long as you've got it on the consoles. However, if you've got it on PC, you would know that it has been taken off the store shelves and even online shelves, at least during the recording of this video. The reason being that the PC port is a shambles, being forced to run at 30 frames per second, really janky and awkward moments being in the game with bugs living awry. And on top of all of this, after a little bit of digging, it was found out that the PC port of Batman Arkham Knight was outsourced to a third-party developer. Now, of course, Batman Arkham Knight is not the only game that is a victim of outsourcing. There are many other games in video game history that have been outsourced in the past. One of which to be in note of, and one of which may just be the biggest perpetrator of outsourcing going too far, is Duke Nukem Forever. A game that took over a decade just to get out the door, and by the time it was done, by the time it had been taken over by so many developers with their own different angles and views for where Duke should go, the game ended up being a lackluster experience for the majority of an audience. Now, as for Batman Arkham Knight, it's become a victim of outsourcing now on two different sides. The first side being the actual PC port itself, and the second being involving its discontinued collector's edition, which got taken off shelves a couple of weeks before the game's release. I'll be talking about these separately throughout this video. Now, first off, let's talk about outsourcing in the realm of video games and the actual digital property itself. Batman Arkham Knight was developed very well. The game, as I said, has been getting some pretty nice reviews out there. Of course, the biggest issue here being with the PC version is not just a port, but an incredibly shoddy port at that, lacking most of the customization options that you should have in a PC version of a game, as well as the big kicker being that its frames per second were locked to 30. Now, if you are playing it on PC at the moment, and if you did buy it before it was taken off of shelves, it is key to note that you can actually change the game to 60 frames per second going into the INI files and changing a few settings. I won't be talking about how you can do that here, but if you do want to search that up, you can. Just use Google, find it out for yourself, and you can run the game at 60 frames per second. But what has outsourcing done exactly? What has outsourcing just done to make the game that much worse? Well, judging by the quality of the PC port, it is obvious that the developers that were creating the PC version were just given everything that was done for the console version and were told, you have this much of a window, I'm guessing roughly a 6 to 5 month window, maybe even less, to get that game fully optimized for PC audiences. And guess what? They didn't get it done. But because release date came around and they had that very tight window, they tried to get it done to the best of their abilities, probably working day and night endlessly to get it out in its current form. Could it have come out much worse? Oh hell yeah. It could have had just as bad of a launch as Fallout New Vegas. And Fallout New Vegas, when that first launched, wasn't outsourced whatsoever. It was just developed by Obsidian, whilst the property were owned by Bethesda. This time round, though the property is owned by WB, the main developers, Rocksteady, have been making the series for a long time now, and if you want someone to make a reliable Batman game, Rocksteady's got it. But this third-party developer that obviously jumped on board in order to do this PC port mustn't have understood what it meant to create a good PC port of a game, especially a game with this much notoriety behind it. It was very disappointing to see, especially when the internet literally erupted with tons of people on social media, especially on Twitter when I was reading it, with all the messages running amok, saying things like, oh my god, it's been locked to 30 FPS, why is this? Why can't I play the game like this? Why am I being restricted? Why? And it's just a shame to see. You see, ladies and gentlemen, do I blame the third-party developer for the quality of the PC port? In fact, I don't. I think they literally tried their best, and the fact that WB themselves have taken the game off of shelves, both digitally and retail-wise, in order to make sure that the PC version is ready for a proper release, and given that little bit of time, shows a good thing. But it also shows a massive weakness. It shows that possibly, I'm not saying this might have happened because it's still up there and we don't quite know yet, but it's quite possible that the people in the publishing sector were the people behind this tirade. As I said earlier, a restrictive release window would have caused the developers to work their asses off in order to try and get this out as best of quality as possible, with most likely day one patches and first week or a few month patches to make sure that it smooths out as of the initial release. But what I don't see is, if the game, obviously having its release window, wasn't ready yet, why didn't they send a message out to the PC consumers? Why didn't they let everyone know that due to the PC port not being up to the standards that WB and Rocksteady have, because they have very high standards, you can tell from the quality of Arkham Knight on the console, huge standards. And due to those standards, why didn't they message the PC consumers and let them know that the game's not up to their expectations yet, and they might need a month or two to work out some bugs, add a few more things in to make sure that the UI was better optimized for PC users. But instead, no. It's another victim of being rushed to the release window and being forced into a third-party development just for a PC port. And that's where it went wrong. I don't understand why Rocksteady were against an idea of doing the PC version themselves. Or even then, maybe Rocksteady did have everything set in stone, ready for the PC version. Maybe they did, and then the publishers said, no, we want you to make sure the console version is at 100%. We will make sure the PC version is done with this developer here. You concentrate on that, we'll concentrate on this. As I said, it is unsure as to whether that is the case as to what's happened here. And it's a shame regardless of whether that is true or not. But that's obviously about the game. What about the collector's edition that was discontinued? Of course, if you don't know what I'm talking about here, there was an edition of Batman Arkham Knight that was supposed to come out, coming with a lot of collector's edition-y stuff, as well as a model of the Batmobile. But because the model of the Batmobile was not up to the standards that WB had, they ended up stripping that entire collection off store shelves, and then they gave people that did pre-order that edition the chance to order the standard game right off the bat. Now, after some digging, it has been proven yet again that even the models this time around were outsourced, not created by a company inside WB that are capable of making amazing figures and amazing models. But because that was outsourced, and again, not up to the standards, WB stripped it down. And it just raised the question, if they did that to the collector's edition, why did they not do that for the digital release of a game? Was it because of a release window? Was it because of a promise? Or was it because they needed that initial game sale to show that they were getting some moolah, and then they were either going to immediately update it post-launch, or, as they are doing now, stripping it off to now rework on it for an even better release? End of the day, ladies and gentlemen, outsourcing is a massive problem in the games industry. In all honesty, outsourcing has done more harm than good. You would think more developers working on a single game would make it better, but that's the problem. With multiple developers working on one game, or one developer working on one port and another developer working on another port, you're going to have conflicting ideas, you're going to have things that aren't set in stone, you're going to have miscommunication errors, and quite frankly, you're going to have quality products coming out like this. A PC version that is so lackluster that it is now non-existent, and the console version reigns supreme, when in all honesty, every version of the game at launch, or at least a few months after the launch, should be up to the standards of us consumers and gamers. But ladies and gentlemen, that's all I'm going to talk about here involving outsourcing and the debacle that happened with Batman Arkham Knight. I'm very much interested to hear what you guys have to say about this, so let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Don the Expert of course from VideoGamesUncovered.com, and I'll be seeing you for another edition of VGU Talks.